Raj Yoga, Pranam Mantra. Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suray Sachit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. Raj Yoga, the previous talk, we had an introduction to what exactly it means to practice. The first book or the first chapter, however you look at it, it was dedicated to Samadhi Yoga, where it discusses the ideals, what exactly yoga intends to do. And now it gets down to sadhana, how to achieve that. Now you will see that so many people these days are interested in yoga, and so many people go and attend the different camps organized by masters. These masters again are of varying capacity, and you cannot doubt them. They're good. They're good. Somewhere the shortcomings lie with the learners. Where exactly things go wrong? I was reading a book by Chris Hadfield. He was a Canadian astronaut. It's a beautiful book. It writes about his experiences as an astronaut. And he beautifully describes how he was trained into being an astronaut. And finally, when he was into that rocket which left the Earth, he says ultimately it took less than 8 minutes for him to leave the gravitational zone to go beyond the orbit of the Earth. And he says, give or add some thousands of hours, he mentions. And then he ends that section very beautifully. He says, to be an astronaut, you need a serious, sustained effort because you need to build a new knowledge base. If you want to be an astronaut, whatever you have learned, that's good. It needs a serious, sustained effort, and you need to build a new knowledge base and develop your physical capabilities. And above all, you need to change your mind, he says. You need to change your mind. You need to think and act like an astronaut. I love this statement of his because in spiritual practices, in yoga, exactly the same thing applies. Anyone who has heard of yoga seriously, and sometimes yoga appears so glamorous, spirituality appears so glamorous, Vedanta appears so glamorous, Advaita appears so glamorous. Compared to that, ritualistic practices, they're not that cool as they say. They're not so appealing. If you are into religious ceremonies, if you go to temple and things like that, it doesn't have much of a market value. But we forget that whether you want to be a yogi or a Vedantin, whatever glamour you want to be added to your life, to your existence, it requires a serious and sustained effort. What Chris Hadfield talks about being an astronaut, Patanjali said long ago, Satu Dirghkala Nirantaya. For a very long time, serious and sustained effort. Patanjali says the same thing 2,500 years ago. And new knowledge base, when we are studying all this yoga, the practices and the obstacles and the difficulties, it's a new knowledge base. You need to have a new knowledge base. You might have been a great achiever in your way of life. You might be an engineer, a doctor, an officer. You might be a scientist, a great scientist. That does not mean that you will be a successful yogi. That doesn't mean that you will be a great Vedantin. This misconception sometimes because of this electronic media there, sometimes people feel that those who have become monks with a huge academic background, they are going to be successful or nothing like that. It's a different branch altogether. And the amount of seriousness, the amount of sustained effort that it requires to acquire a degree, spiritual life demands much more, much more, much more. Ask any successful monk, he will say that effort is massive. Ordinary hearts, ordinary minds, they cannot bear it. It's not possible for them. And then you need to change your mind, the whole thinking process. If you ask a scientist, he will say that science is my God. If science is your God, then spirituality cannot be your way of life. It's just not possible. If you say music is my God, art is my God, art is spirituality, well, in that case, spirituality is not meant for you. Because you need to think like a yogi. You need to act like a yogi. You need to behave like a yogi. In your practices, in your spiritual practices, you have to be a yogi. In your day-to-day life, you have to be a yogi. And you have to think like a yogi. Unless you can do that with all seriousness and sustained, it can go on for years, it can go for births. Only then you can hope to have some success. Now, because I remembered this statement, I thought I would say, because third sutra that we are going to take up, about which we had just mentioned in passing in the previous talk, it talks about pain in its root. Because our mind is so full of pain. When we enjoy something, whatever enjoyment that might be, ultimately the end result will be pain. Either you are going through pain or you are about to reach pain. It is absolutely wrong to think that you can ever have happiness. When Lord Buddha focused on dukkha, that was the reason. The reason was that it's all pain, 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 pain. Now, when you analyze the whole thing in the Indian context, our scriptures say that pain is of three kinds. The technical term is adhyatmic, adhibhotik, adhidevik. Adhyatmic is the pain that comes from within. For example, fever and all. Fever, etc. This comes from within. Or some kind of mental pain, anguish. All these things come from within. And there is adhibhotik, problems that are caused by the beings that are around you. For example, a mosquito bites and you get malaria. This is adhibhotik pain. So there is some kind of upheaval, and that results in some kind of pain, misery, kast and dukkha. Generally, it's known as, the technical term for this is tap. Tap is that which generates heat within you. You don't want it. You want to stay cool. And yet something goes wrong and it creates heat within you. This heat is generated either from within or from without. And the third one is, which comes from unknown cause or unexpected cause. For example, you may have floods, you may have earthquake. Now, no one knows why earthquake takes place. And there's no way you can stop an earthquake. There is volcanic eruption. Anything may happen. Things may go wrong. So, in ancient times, they believed that they are the gods who rule nature. And for some reason, when they are not happy, or for some other reason, they let loose this pain. These are known as adhidevik. So misery that comes to us, pain that comes to us, comes in three formats: from inside the body, from the beings that surround us, and the godly forces which are unseen to us. Now, when you take all these pains together, all these miseries together, in yoga, collectively these are known as klesh, pain. Collectively, the term is klesh. Klesh means that which causes pain, that which does not allow you to stay normal, that doesn't allow you to be what you are. Now, when you look at these kleshas, Patanjali classifies them into five: avidya, smita, raga, dvesh, abhinivesh. Now, there are two ways to look at it. One is from coming down from top, and second one is going up from bottom. Now, when Patanjali has this great speciality, he always talks of the higher things first, and from there he lets things evolve. In modern times, you will see whatever subject you study, generally they start with an axiom or an axiomatic truth or just a fundamental fact. And from there, they build a subject. Patanjali goes in a different way. That's his style of writing. So he begins with avidya, asmita, raga, dvesh, abhinivesh. And he says, klesha. These five are the klesha. Now, this is very important. Now, those of you who are interested in knowing what is pain and how to uproot pain, for them, this is very important. Not only for a yogi, even for a common man, it is good to know what causes pain and how to get rid of them. So, the English translation for these five klesha is pain-bearing obstructions, Swamiji says, because you want to be what you are. You want to know that you are divine. You want, in the language of yoga, you want to know that you are pure, infinite Purusha, the soul. And yet these five come and surround you in such a way that you completely forget your true nature and you identify with this world and you cannot get out of this world. Klesh is translated by Swamiji as pain-bearing obstructions to yoga, to the attainment of your true nature. So, these are the five things that tie us down to this world. Why we are in this body? We are in this body because we are tied down by these five forces of pain. Do we really want pain? No, we don't want pain. But foolishly, that's very interesting. There must have been innumerable occasions when during your childhood you acted foolishly. Unfortunately, when we grow up, then also we continue to act foolishly. And when things go wrong with us, we wonder why things went wrong. Things went wrong because you acted foolishly. You are in this world because you are acting foolishly. You are suffering because you act foolishly. So, according to the commentators, they say that these five, avidya, asmita, raga, dvesh, abhinivesha, translated in English becomes ignorance. Avidya is the first, ignorance. We will be describing each one of them. And then there is asmita. Asmita is egoism, where Purusha, the pure infinite soul, identifies itself with existence, with this relative existence. It's a mystery. Why the absolute will ever identify itself with the relative? Why the infinite, why the unlimited will ever identify itself with the limited? No one knows the answer. Patanjali tries to give an answer later, but then there's no justification. That's why Vedanta moves over to Maya. Anyway, that's a different issue. And then comes avidya, asmita, rag. Rag in Sanskrit means attachment. Rag is attachment. And there is dvesha. Dvesha is where you have aversion. So normally what we know, normally, in daily life, you will see we are swayed by these twin forces of attachment and aversion. This attachment and aversion, they are opposing forces. They create a torque. And the forces that act on us, these twin forces opposing each other, because attachment is about going towards something and aversion is about coming away from something. And these two create a torque. And it tears us to pieces. Normally, we are aware of these two, rag and dvesh, attachment, aversion. Before that, actually, is asmita, which is egoism, the junction of the conscious with the unconscious. And even before that, there is avidya, the divine ignorance. And rag and dvesha, its great product, the ultimate product about which we practically never talk, we never discuss, is abhinivesh. Abhinivesh is clinging to life, the desire to live. Abhinivesh is a dangerous thing. You will see that whatever we do, somewhere, it's ultimately the desire to live. Those of you who might have read my book, Carving a Sky, there the discussion begins with this point. Somewhere the desire to live. But there is another side to this story, which we will discuss later. A common man wants to live through his progeny. The way a tree spreads its seeds and hopes to continue. I mean, we don't know if trees can really think. But human beings do think. They want to have children. A spiritual master, he wants to live through his disciples. An artist wants to live eternally through his creation. A poet wants to live through his poetry. Worse than that, there is the desire to cling to the body that we have. We want to hold on to this body. It's not only desire for continuity of life, desire to hold on to this body, not only to this life, to this body. These five, now see, we had only rag and dvesh, and you can see in your own life how everything that we do, there is rag, there is dvesh. Actually, there are five: avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesh. And imagine the storm that they create in our life all the time. Not every day, all the time. Everything that we are doing are product of these five forces. 2 was bad enough. 5, unimaginable. Just unimaginable. It is because of these 5 that we are getting pain all the time. Commentators, they say that all these 5 are born because of one single reason, that is mithya gyan, false perception. For some strange reason, the pure consciousness comes in contact with Prakriti, which is Trigunatmika. And from there begins a series of false perceptions. And once there are these false perceptions coming down stages, they ultimately result in 3 tap, which we mentioned, avidya, our adhyatmic, adibhautik, and adidevik. Whenever you have pain, whenever you feel sad, first you analyze what kind of pain you are going through. Is it adhyatmic? Did it just come from within? Adibhautik, was it caused by somebody around you? Or absolutely unknown cause? And from there you can easily analyze, you can go back and see. Either it was caused because you are holding on to your dear life, or you have strong attachment, aversion to certain things, or seen from the higher perspective of spirituality, you are something really high, and yet you are identifying yourself with something very low. Actually, this is a very big problem with us. Very big problem with us. We forget who we truly are. And we identify with utter nonsense. We identify ourselves with dirt. And furthermore, we identify because we don't know who we are. And we don't want to know who we are. If you go to one of these Hindi belt, particularly, I have traveled a lot and I have stayed in Bihar, UP, and Delhi, all the three states. Whenever something goes wrong with somebody, some police person catches, or there is some accident or something, first thing they'll say, do you know who I am? I feel tempted to ask, do you really know who you are? Now, there is a very interesting joke. We had our very revered Swami Atmasthanandaji Maharaj, who was some time ago president of the Ramakrishna Mission. He was a very fun-loving person. He was a wonderful person, amazing personality. So, before that, he was the General Secretary of the Ramakrishna Mission. And even before that, he was Assistant General Secretary of the Ramakrishna Mission. So once there was one program, some inauguration was there, and some students had taken admission in one of our institutions. The person who was supposed to head that program, he started talking. Now, that Swamiji, he himself was a very humorous person. Not humorous, he was really great wit, very intelligent. Wit is a sign of intelligence. So, when he had started speaking, after 2-3 minutes, revered Atmasthanji Maharaj interrupted him and told him, first tell who you are. And that speaker Swami, he turned towards Atmasthanji, bowed before him and said, well, I have become a monk just to know that. And there was such an uproarious laughter and clapping, and Atmasthanji, oh, he clapped. He loved it. It's a very pleasant banter, but it's so loving. He says, you tell who you are, and says, I have become a monk to learn that. So when people say, do you know who I am? One should ask, do you know who you are? I'm sorry that I'm slightly deviating from the topic, but it's such a wonderful topic. There was this great German philosopher, Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer had his own brand of philosophy, and there was a time when he was very, very, very quite famous in the intellectual circles, although his name is not known much nowadays. Schopenhauer used to think a lot, and once he was sitting in a park, and it was closing time. The park had closed. So the guards were making around to see that no one was inside. And the guard saw Schopenhauer. The guard did not know Schopenhauer. So the guard asks him, who you are? His question, he meant, are you a guard or something like that? Schopenhauer was German. He says, I'll give you 10 mark if you can tell me who I am. He was into profound philosophical inquiries. And he was deeply impressed by Indian thought system. And he had studied the Upanishads and all. And you find a reflection of the Upanishads in his writings. I'll give you 10 mark if you can tell me who I am. So they say it makes a very funny situation. I mean, somebody asks you who I am. He says, well, who you are. You may go on talking about who I am, but actually you don't know, because you have identified yourself with ignorance. So, because we have forgotten all this, ultimately we have these 5 different kinds of pain coming to us. We suffer, we pant, We want a way out. And we are in mad, blind search of a way out, we find some source of joy, some source of happiness, some source so that we can hold on to our this miserable existence. And we forget our pain. And just like the dew in summertime, the dew in summertime evaporates in no time. Just like that, that happiness evaporates. And back to your pain. But do we deserve pain? No, we don't. Why? Because in reality, we are soul. We are pure soul. In reality, we are identifying with this body. We are identifying with this mind. Swamiji beautifully puts it one sentence: all pain of the soul is delusion. Your pain is delusion. I tell you, I feel now, I really feel bad when I tend to get personal in these talks. These are general talks, these are also class talks. So sometimes I tend to get personal. But believe me, dear listeners, dear viewers, can you really sleep? Can you really be at peace once you read this particular sentence or listen to this sentence, come across this sentence, and when you try to feel this sentence? All pain of the soul is simply delusion. Can you imagine the hugeness of the statement, the majesty of the statement? Your pain is a mere delusion because you have identified yourself with the body. That has generated abhinivation. You feel that you will be destroyed. Corona will destroy you. Cancer will destroy you because you think you are a body. Pain comes and you feel it will destroy you because you think you are a mind. And you don't want to hold on to you don't want to give up this existence. You keep holding on to this existence because the foolish association, the stupid association that we have built this nature, we don't want to give up. We create this delusion for ourselves. We live in this delusion. We even try to justify this delusion. And in worst cases, we love to glorify. We love to glorify all this pain, this association, as we shall see. Forget about justification. We even glorify. It may sound pretty odd to you. Once, one very famous top company of the country, I shouldn't name them. So I had somehow made contacts with them, and I requested them to give us some money from their CSR funds, corporate social responsibility. And they wanted to know what kind of work we are doing for public and poor. And then I laughed and said, "Tell me, sir, how long you are going to glorify poverty?" It may sound harsh, but no. Ramakrishna Mission is working so much for the poor. We people, we are working for the upliftment of the masses and education and health and all kinds. Does that mean that all our energies and all our efforts should go only for that? Nothing for education, nothing for higher things. And the gentleman laughed. And I kept insisting, how long you are going to glorify poverty? We need to do that, no doubt about it. But higher education also demands attention. So anyway, after that, he gave us a very large sum. He loved that statement, and then and we could build one whole department out of that. We justify and we glorify. How unfortunate. The root cause is described now. How all this klesha, all this tap, all this pain, they come into existence, they come into being. Avidya kshetram uttaresham prasupta tanu vichinna udaharanam. Ignorance, avidya. This, somehow we have forgotten our true nature and avidya. It says, avidya kshetram uttaresham. The four that are going to follow, asmita, raga, dvesha, avinivesh. Avidya is the mother, not mother. It's the productive field. Productive field. It's a highly fertile field. You just need to throw some seeds and you'll see how they sprout and how they grow. It's like Parthenium seeds. You just can't uproot the Parthenium. It's such a wild grass and it destroys everything that is there. Those of you who have seen this wild grass Parthenium, such a dangerous thing. Avidya, kshetram. It's a productive field. And this avidya, it comes in four different forms. The ignorance, the divine ignorance, which is the root cause of all our pain. The first one is prasupta. Supta means sleeping, dormant. Prasupta is spatially dormant. Generally, avidya, generally ignorance is dormant in each one of us. We shall just have a look at that. Then second is tanu, which has been attenuated. That has been made extremely mild. The sting has been taken away. And vichinna. Vichinna is destroyed. Or overpowered is the right word, because till you know who you are, the possibility of their coming back is always there. So the term is, you can say, overpowered or under check. Vichinna. Vichinna normally, under normal conditions in Sanskrit, means that which has been destroyed. But here it means checked, kept under check, overpowered. And Patanjali, he was such a great philosopher, and yet his language is so poetic. He says, Udaranam, fully manifest, dormant, attenuated, overpowered, and fully manifest, expanded. Swamiji gives the example. He says, how often we use the term as innocent as a baby. Sometimes we, like even those who knew Sri Ramakrishna say that he was such a baby-like person. When there is a baby, 6-month-old, 1-year-old, 2-year-old, we say, so innocent. But we don't know what kind of package he is coming with. You don't know whether he is going to become a truly vicious person. There have been so many vicious persons. If you read the modern history of America, you will see that America was run either by these cowboys or by mafia. So when the baby was born, I have yet to know of anyone who'd say about his son or grandson that how I wish that my baby becomes a brigand. My baby becomes a vicious person. No one wants. And yet they become. And rarely in India you will hear somebody telling that, oh, my baby is born. I wish that he becomes a monk. Sometimes, yes. But there's rarest of rare, rarest of rare. Saintly, okay. Goody goody, yes. Generally, they want goody goody ones. Actually, people don't know what exactly they want. They will be talking big about having this and having that. But so when a baby comes, we don't know what kind of sanskaras, what kind of tendencies, what kind of impressions he's carrying within him. As the baby grows, he or she, these sanskaras, which lie dormant within like seeds, they will start sprouting. He will never know whether there will be a mango tree or there will only be the wild growth of Parthenium. Just don't know. Sometimes it's seen in movies and stories that two brothers born of same mom, one becomes a die-hard police officer, another becomes a vicious person. So well known. When it comes to yogi, those who are practicing, for example, those of you who are listening to this talk right now, you have controlled your emotions and giving up for all the worldly things. You are listening to this talk. Why? Because you are struggling to overpower your worldly tendencies. Senses want to run wild. And because the senses want to run wild, today one of my friends was telling that mind wants to stay calm. Mind doesn't want to stay disturbed. That might be correct. But the senses, they always run wild. Senses always want to run wild because senses and the sense objects, they are made up of same material. You have to listen to our second or third talk. There we have discussed the process of creation. There we have mentioned how the respective objects of every sense is the mother of both senses and sense objects. Senses are within, sense objects are outside. That's why they want to join. And senses, they are so powerful that they drag the mind along with themselves. Even if one sense is powerful, it is enough to draw the mind and take everything along, the body and everything along with it. A practicing yogi or anyone who is into spirituality, even those who are practicing rituals, those who practice rituals, see, during this winter, they go for Ganga Batna. There is going to be Makar Sankranti. And people from all over India used to come to Kolkata and then go to Ganga Sagar and have a bath on Makar Sankranti day. Braving all the discomfort, braving all these problems. And in this winter, they would go and have bath. If they could not come to Ganga Sagar, they would try to take bath wherever they are and worship. There is some kind of self-control. If this self-control is sustained, as we mentioned in the beginning, that serious, sustained effort, serious and sustained effort, if there is, that is what makes you spiritual. Then you are Tanu. Your avidya is becoming softened, attenuated. And then there is Vichin, the successful ones. Those who have succeeded in controlling their senses and hence succeeded in controlling their mind. They have succeeded in overing, or rather putting reins to this wild run of avidya. So, the problem with this is that the repressing cause, like if you stop meditation, if you stop leading this spiritual life, once again they will manifest. That's the problem. Unless you have God realization, unless you know who you are, this problem of their getting expanded always remains. Very often it's seen that people who have struggled for a very long time, something goes wrong with them and they give in to temptations. Our Puranas have such beautiful stories. There was this great sage Vishwamitra whose family gave us this famous Gayatri Mantra. When he was doing tapasya, vigorous tapasya, a nymph Apsara, Menka, was sent from the heavens to go tempt him. And Vishwamitra was tempted because he had not realized who he was. And after that period of temptation was over, he went back to meditation. And next time, Ramba was sent, another Apsara. And Vishwamitra became so furious, he said, I'll burn you down to ashes. Ramba ran for her life. Can you imagine? Can you imagine a female running away from a person out of sheer fear because she was trying to tempt? It's such an unusual thing. You need to have a tremendous self-control born of spiritual practices. And that's what Vishwamitra did. And that is when he became one with the spiritual knowledge. However, expanded udaranam, this is the most interesting thing. See, you might see sometimes, there are rundown palaces, some house has broken down, is not being well maintained. Suddenly you will see some banyan tree or some peepal tree, ashwatha tree sprouts. After some time, it becomes pretty large. Then you wonder how come. Because seed was all along there. It was not getting the favorable environment. The soil was missing. The water was missing. It was not able to sprout. These sanskaras born of avidya. Avidya is sanskar. In sanskar, sum total of sanskaras. They are avidya. This avidya, these sanskaras, the moment they get favorable environment, surrounding is favorable, they sprout. There is this beautiful saying, honesty is lack of opportunity. In most cases, people who are honest, they did not get an opportunity to cheat. There are people who don't. They are the great ones. I personally know of many senior officials who held very responsible positions and they were never tempted this way or that way. No way. As far as we people are concerned, for us, we swing between prasupt and udara. Most tendencies are dormant in us. Some tendencies are working out. Some tendencies have expressed themselves. This is avidya. And avidya is the mother of the remaining four. Patanjali doesn't use the word mother. He says kshetram, productive field, fertile field. And what exactly is this avidya? Anitya ashuchi dukkhanam atmasu nitya shuchi shukhatmakhyati avidya. It's a long, this aphorism is slightly long. There are different terms in it. It says anitya ashuchi dukkhanatmasu. There is anitya, ashuchi and dukkha. In anitya, you see nitya, shuchi, sukhatma khyati, sukha. So three terms he uses. Anitya. Anitya is non-eternal, ashuchi is impure, and Dukkha is pain, misery. Things by themselves might be non-eternal, impure. That means not good. Impure means not good and full of pain. And yet, we see eternity in that. We see it as eternal. We see it as lovable. We see it as pure, suchi. And sukha, we find enjoyment there. This is avidya. Avidya is being described here, defined here as false perception. What kind of false perception? Where the object is perceived by a deluded person in its opposite format. Whatever it is, we see the opposite of that. Anitya is seen as nitya. Nitya means eternal. Ashuchi is pure, good, noble. Dukkha is pain. Sukha is happiness. So, says one of the commentators say, body is an impure thing. It is such an impure thing that once dead, people have to take bath if that body is touched. And if you try to think of what is contained inside the body, you will be horrified. Essentially, body is impure, and yet you will find that how people who are in love, they compare it with, say, moon. Poets love, compare it with moon. Say, moon-faced Chandravadan. This is Maya. This is avidya. Life. We know that life will end after some years, and yet you want it to continue till eternity. You think as if you will live for eternity. In Mahabharata, there is that famous question by Yaksh to Yudhishthira, where he says, was the most wonderful thing, amazing thing, surprising thing in this world? Yudhishthira answers that people see others dying every day, and yet they think they are not going to die. Somewhere you think that life is going to be eternal. You think you are immortal. This is avidya. People who smoke, they know smoking is not good, yet they find joy in that. People who drink, they know drinking is not good, yet they find joy in that. All this is caused because of avidya. Avidya is the root cause of all this. And this is avidya basically. Swamiji says that we think I am the body and not the self, the pure, the effulgent, ever blissful. And that is ignorance. Instead of thinking all the time who truly you are, we always identify ourselves with things which we are not. We think we are this body, we think we are this mind, we think we are this emotion. And worse, people who have their own individuality. For example, kids, they may be your grandkids, they may be your kids. How can you identify with them? He's a completely different entity, and yet we identify. This is Maya. This is avidya. Patanjali, the great master of yoga, he puts the entire thing in such a simple way. Seeing what is not. At the higher level, Purush confuses itself with Prakriti. Pure consciousness confuses itself with the changing nature. This is avidya. Then comes asmita. Avidya, and next is asmita. It says, Drik darshan shaktayor ekatma eva asmita. It's a sutra, aphorism. It says, egoism is identification of the seer with the instrument of seeing. The seer is Purusha. We have discussed in our second and third talk how real sentience, real consciousness lies with the Purush. Purush is the real seer. And the instrument of seeing is the senses. This junction, first comes the divine ignorance. It doesn't stop there, it goes further and it identifies. The junction is there. And as they say, all hell is going to break loose. There will now be trouble, trouble, trouble. Not only that you made a mistake, Purush identified itself with Prakriti. You go one step further and you join yourself. And that's why we identify ourselves with the mind. Mind is the knowing instrument. You will rarely come across any preacher, you will rarely come across any scientist, you will rarely come across any great achiever who does not identify himself with the mind stuff. Patanjali, the great teacher, he realizes the problem. He tries to caution us. But the way we are made, we are not going to listen. And because we identify ourselves with the mind and body, when we are sick, we feel terrible. We say, I am so sick. I identify with the mind. I say, I love this person. Or I am angry. How can you be angry? You are pure. You are noble. You are pure consciousness. How can you be angry? It's not only that we speak like that. It's not just figure of speech. It's a fact for us. We become one with anger. This is asmita. When you feel that you are in love, how so much of literature has been created by just this feeling, I am in love. And there have been kings and there have been these powers that be who feel that they are angry because someone did something wrong. And the army marches on. It's not always greed. And even if there is greed, they need to masquerade. They need to put it in such a way that others will not be offended. I mean, there has to be some kind of justification. During Second World War, Germany went out to punish Poland. And that's how things began, stories. With Asmita, this is Purush and Buddhi. When Purush identify itself with Buddhi, Asmita is born. Ego, you are identified. Ego is not the normal English term here. It means the junction, the identification. The stage is now set. The drama is now in full flow, full swing. Full swing. And then comes rag, attachment. Everything that appeals to my mind, everything that appeals to my body, everything that appeals to my senses, I go wild for those things. I love them. I'll do anything. They say, I'll do anything for you. Why? Because I love you. I love you. I honor you. People will spend all their wealth. People will spend their honor. People will stake their honor on people, the undeserving ones. Why? Because you being Purusha, you being pure consciousness, no one deserves even a penny of yours. Forget about millions. No one deserves even a penny of you. And they say about Cleopatra, the smile that launched 1,000 ships. How can you do that? Because you are ignorant. And because you have rag, attachment. You love something passionately and you say that I'll do anything for you, and you go all out. And worse, we find pleasure in strange things, weird things. People even find pleasure in suicides, and people injure themselves. People cut their skin and they love it when blood flows out. These are manics. Those who take drugs, those who take wine and all that, they're like that. You first get attached to those things and then you enjoy. If really those things were worthy of enjoyment, then everyone would have gone for that. For example, food. Everyone needs food. So we all go for food. We all need oxygen. So we all go for that. But rag is not, when we are talking about attachment, we are not talking about food and all. We are talking about things which others don't need and yet you need. This is attachment. And its Siamese twin is dvesha. There are things we don't like, we hate. And because we hate, we want to stay away from that. So aversion dwells on pain, dvesha. Says, sukhanushayi ragaha. Attachment is where you find pleasure. And dvesha is dukkhanushayi, that dwells on pain. Anything that gives you pain. They say that when beings evolve, when beings start evolving, starting from the state of amoeba, and when you have just the rudiment of the brain, absolutely the rudiment, first thing to come is amygdala. Amygdala is all about survival. And because it is about survival, it only knows fight or flight. And it knows what can be eaten, food. And it knows how to have next of its skin. It knows from where it can run away. It knows where to go. This is the basic instinct, absolutely the fundamental instincts. Things you love, you move towards that. Things where you find pain. Fear is an extreme case of pain. You know that ultimate pain will be inflicted, and that is what results in fear. You try to run away from that. Avidya, asmita, raga. I hope the idea is clear to you. And the fifth is abhinivesh, clinging to life. Now, Swami Vivekananda has given a great explanation to this abhinivesha. That will take a lot of time, so we will not be able to cover that topic today. We'll take it up in the next talk. Abhinivesh is holding on to life, cling on to life, and this desire, this survival instinct, they say, you want to continue to exist, you don't want to die. If you take up this idea from human beings to the most ordinary of beings, those who are in the early stages of existence, early stages of evolution, you will see that there is no being that wants to die. Only in human beings there are people who want to commit suicide, and there also there is some desire to continue. Says, swara savahi vidusopi tatharudho abhinivesha. Flowing through its own nature, abhinivesha is its own nature, and established even in the learned, even the most learned. A person may be a scientist, a person may be sage, not a great sage, an ordinary sage, is the clinging to life. That is the beauty of desire to live, avinivesh, a very favorite term of mine. Everything that we do is somehow rooted in avinivesh. Actually, avidya is at one end of the spectrum, Avinivesh is the other at the other end of the spectrum. It begins with avidya, travels through rag and dvesh, asmita is in between, and ends with avinivesh. Because you want to survive, and exactly for that reason you have rag and dvesh. If you did not want to survive, rag and dvesh would not have been there. And you want to survive because you don't know of your true nature. You don't know that nobody can end you, nobody can kill you, because you are infinite, you are immortal. We will take up this sutra number 9, Avinivesh, in the next talk. Thank you so much.